You know that feeling, maybe a persistent ache in your joints? Perhaps some stiffness that makes getting out of bed, well, a bit of an ordeal.
Yeah, it's incredibly common.
If that sounds familiar to you, you're really in good company. Estimates suggest around 1 in 5 adults in America experience this kind of thing.
And often that points towards osteoarthritis. It's the most common type of arthritis out there.
Right. But here's the thing. Despite how widespread it is, the treatments we currently have, they mainly focus on managing the symptoms.
Easing the pain, reducing stiffness, maybe improving movement.
Exactly. What seems to be missing are treatments that really get to the root cause of the disease, the things actually driving the joint damage.
And the scale of this is it's staggering globally. There are projections suggesting that by 2050, maybe 1 billion people worldwide could be affected by osteoarthritis.
1 billion people, wow.
Yeah, it really highlights how urgent it is to find, more effective ways to tackle it.
Absolutely. And that's precisely why we're doing this deep dive today. We're looking at some, frankly, pretty significant research.
A really big study.
Yeah, a huge study that's identified hundreds of genes linked to osteoarthritis. Think of it like potentially cracking the genetic code of the disease.
Which could open up whole new avenues.
Totally. Paving the way for new treatments, maybe even finding new uses for drugs we already have. So our mission today is to unpack the key findings, understand how they did it, and figure out what the real-world implications might be for people living with this condition.
Okay, so this study, it's really ambitious. It was just published in Nature, and it's the largest genome-wide association study, or GWS, on osteoarthritis ever done.
The largest ever.
By far. Just to give you a sense of the scale, the researchers analyzed genetic data from almost 2 million individuals.
2 billion.
Yep. Roughly 500,000 people who actually had osteoarthritis, and then about 1.5 million people who didn't as a control group.
That is an immense amount of data. Okay, so with all that information, what were the headline discoveries?
Well, the big one is just the sheer number of genetic markers they found. The study pinpointed 962 specific genetic locations linked to osteoarthritis.
962. That's a lot.
It is. And what's really significant for you to grasp is that 513 of those, more than half, were completely new.
New, as in never linked to osteoarthritis before.
Exactly. Never before associated with the condition. So this isn't just a small tweak to our understanding. It's a massive expansion. It potentially uncovers biological pathways we hadn't even considered before in relation to OA.
Okay, can you quickly explain what a genetic marker is for anyone maybe less familiar?
Sure. Think of them like signposts along your DNA. There's specific spots in the genetic code that can vary from person to person.
Right.
And sometimes these variations are found more often in people with certain conditions, like osteoarthritis in this case. They don't necessarily cause the disease directly, but they're statistically linked to the risk of developing it.
Got it. So 513 new signposts. That sounds like it could really change the landscape for developing treatments.
Precisely. That's the hope. These genetic findings have essentially given researchers hundreds of potential new targets for drug development.
Hundreds?
Yes. One of the study's co-authors, Dr. Mark Hawksberg, called them an exciting set of findings leading to hundreds of potential new drug targets.
Wow.
So imagine developing medications that specifically zero in on these newly identified genes or the proteins they make, aiming to, prevent or at least slow down osteoarthritis progression.
That really would be a game changer. But hang on, it's not just about creating brand new drugs from the ground up, is it? You mentioned something about existing medications.
That's another really critical insight from the study. So the researchers identified about 700 genes they felt pretty confident play a role in osteoarthritis.
Okay, 700 high-confidence genes.
Right. And here's the really promising part. Around 10% of those genes, they actually code for proteins that are already targeted by existing approved drugs used for other conditions.
Wait, so drugs that are already on the shelf for something else might work for arthritis?
That's the potential implication. We call it drug repurposing.
Drug repurposing. Okay. That sounds like it could seriously speed things up, right? Getting new treatments out there faster.
Exactly. The study leader, Dr. Eleftheria Zaghini, really emphasized this. She said basically that with this knowledge, we are now one step closer to accelerating the development of effective treatments for osteoarthritis.
Because the safety testing is already done, or at least partially done?
A lot of it, yeah. These existing drugs have already been through rigorous testing for safety and effectiveness for whatever they were originally approved for. So repurposing them for osteoarthritis could, theoretically, dramatically shorten the timeline compared to developing a completely new drug from scratch.
That is fantastic news. It's like, I don't know, finding a tool in your garage that you didn't realize could fix this other problem you have.
It's a good analogy.
So beyond just finding these potential drug targets new and repurposed, did this massive study also give us deeper insights into like how osteoarthritis actually develops, the biology behind it?
Yes, it did. By looking at all these genetic links, the scientists were able to identify 8 key biological processes that seem pretty crucial in how osteoarthritis develops or progresses.
8 key processes. Can you give examples?
Yeah, they specifically mentioned a couple that might surprise you. One was the circadian clock, our body's internal 24-hour cycle.
The body clock.
Yeah.
How does that connect to joints?
Well, that's what's fascinating. And the other example they gave was the function of glial cells.
Glial cells. Aren't those in the nervous system, supporting neurons?
That's right, support cells in the nervous system. So finding links to these processes suggests osteoarthritis might be tied into some really fundamental bodily rhythms and maybe even the nervous system's support structures.
That's not the first thing you'd think of with joint pain. Usually it's all about cartilage and wear and tear.
Exactly. It suggests the disease is probably more complex than just mechanical breakdown. There seem to be deeper biological mechanisms involved.
So understanding these pathways, like the circadian rhythm one or the glial cell one, could lead to totally new ways of thinking about treatment.
Potentially, yes. For instance, maybe therapies could be developed to regulate the circadian rhythms within joint tissue specifically, or perhaps modulate how those glial cells behave in the context of the inflammation and pain that comes with OA.
This really does reframe osteoarthritis. It's less of a simple mechanical problem and more like an intricate biological puzzle.
That's a good way to put it.
And it sounds like this kind of genetic insight could also help make treatments more, well, personalized, tailored to the individual.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of the promise here. Understanding a person's specific genetic risk factors could eventually help doctors tailor treatment strategies.
Like knowing which pathways are most active in a particular patient.
Potentially, yes. And it could also help refine clinical trials. You could select participants who are more likely to respond to a specific drug based on their genetic profile.
Making trials more efficient and more likely to succeed.
Right. It really pushes towards the goal of precision medicine, moving away from that sort of one-size-fits-all approach to treating osteoarthritis.
It's easy to get swept up in the science, which is exciting. But let's pull back for a second and think about the bigger picture. Osteoarthritis isn't just about the biology. It has a massive impact on people's lives and, well, on society.
Oh, definitely. If you look at the economic burden just in the U.S., it's staggering. We're talking costs exceeding $486 billion annually.
$500 billion almost.
Pretty much. That figure comes from Dr. Mark Gladwin, who was involved with the broader context of this research. He called that cost astonishing and really stressed the urgent need for more effective treatments.
And that cost isn't just hospital bills, right?
No, not at all. It includes lost work productivity, the cost of informal care, medications, surgeries, aids, and just the general impact on quality of life, which is harder to put a number on.
It's sobering when you think about it that way. How many lives and livelihoods are affected?
It really is. It makes finding better ways to manage and treat OA not just a medical goal, but a really critical societal one.
Okay, so we have these incredibly promising findings, huge potential.
Yeah.
But like with any major study, were there any limitations we should be aware of? Things we need to keep in mind?
Yes, that's a really important point to raise. While this study was massive, it's crucial for you to know that the vast majority of the participants, about 87%, were of European ancestry.
87% European ancestry. Okay, so what does that mean for the results?
It means the study didn't really have enough statistical power, enough people from other backgrounds to reliably identify genetic associations that might be specific or more common in, say, populations of African, Asian, or Hispanic ancestry.
So while it's a huge leap forward, the picture might not be complete for everyone globally.
Exactly. The genetic factors influencing OA risk might differ somewhat across different populations. Dr. Gladwin also highlighted this, saying something like, in developing new treatments, it is crucial to enhance wider participation so that we can identify novel genetic associations across a broader spectrum of populations.
That makes perfect sense. We need that diversity in research to make sure any breakthroughs can eventually benefit everyone who needs them.
Precisely. We need future studies to include many more people from diverse backgrounds to get that truly comprehensive view.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've covered a lot. Basically, this massive genetic study has uncovered hundreds of new genes linked to osteoarthritis.
Yeah, opening up really exciting possibilities for new drug targets and
Yeah.
also potentially repurposing drugs we already use.
Right. And it's also given us deeper insights into the actual biological processes driving the diseases like the body clock and glial cells, which is fascinating.
And all of this offers real potential for more personalized precision medicine approaches down the line.
It really feels like a significant step forward in understanding this incredibly common and, frankly, often debilitating condition.
I agree, it marks a potential turning point.
So as you go about your day today, maybe you feel a little twinge in your knee climbing stairs or some stiffness in your hands, just consider this. We might be on the edge of a whole new chapter in how we understand and treat osteoarthritis, all thanks to digging deep into our own genetic code.
It's a powerful thought.
And that leads me to a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over. Think about the broader implications here. If we can unravel the genetic roots of common conditions like OA, how might that kind of knowledge fundamentally reshape healthcare, maybe even our whole approach to well-being in the coming years? What other really common ailments, things many of us deal with, do you think might have their secrets unlocked by these kinds of huge, large-scale genetic studies in the future? It's a really fascinating area to think about, and it feels like we've only just started scratching the surface.